So, Peter Grossman, we wanted to have you on because you, for many years, were our dude from Us Weekly magazine. And you were there the minute Kim and Kanye got married. In fact, I think you broke the news to us and our audience that Kim and Kanye were a couple and that they were getting married every time there was a baby. Like you were always our go-to Kim and Kanye person. And I wanted to have you on to get your reaction because we found out today that they are filing for divorce.
I saw that, how times have changed, Cooper, because you actually broke that news to me. It popped up on my phone and I was cooking risotto and I turned to I'm like, baby, Kim and Kanye are getting divorced. Cooper just told me. So I knew it was true, of course, because you told me. It made me think a lot actually about when they got together. And I was thinking about it, and I remember we talked about this at length about how people thought it was a publicity stunt, because everything that Kim was doing sort of at that time was a publicity stunt. All the set up paparazzi photos. I mean, now I'm raising my hand, complicit in that. Obviously, I was very much a part of that whole scene as the photo guy at Us Weekly, but when you first started seeing paparazzi pictures of them walking down the street in New York or whatever, and everyone's like, oh, sure, this is just a thing. And I remember saying to you at the time, and I know that this will be, we can dig up the audio somewhere, I'm sure. I remember saying to you, no. This is not fake. They're going to get married. Like this is a couple. This makes more sense to me than any celebrity couple has ever made, because they were both people that were so hyper aware of image, of the importance of how people viewed you at a time when, celebrities have always, to some extent, right, had been aware of that, but not the way it is today. And Kim and Kanye were just very much at the forefront of that, of just, it matters how people perceive me.
Right.
And for Kim, it was everything, right? I mean, like there was no record to fall back on if people didn't like her. At least I like her music was not an option.
Right.
So her whole business was being likable, was being someone that you would just watch live. And so she was, and everyone sort of was aware of that. And when you see the two of them together, you think, oh, well, this must just be another one of their things. But they actually, there's human beings in there. Right. And they may want different things, than you and I may want, but there's people in there. And as people, they made perfect sense together. As just like, oh, if I took my thing and put it with your thing, it would be a bigger thing.
Right.
It was weird to think of, even though I was working at Us at the time, I come from a music background of Rolling Stone, and just as a music guy, it was always weird to me to think like, what is Kim Kardashian going to do to elevate Kanye West? Like he's already
boy,
right? He's
boy, were you wrong about that? Because that's all she did was elevate him. Yeah,
completely wrong about it. And you just think like, I mean, and there's a list. There's all kinds of stuff that goes along with that. Is just like the inherent misogyny of America. There's there's a lot of stuff that goes in to that thought that even I was guilty of also. But because he was already at the top of the game that he was in. Right. But there was, it was at a time when people sort of stayed in their lanes. Right. And it being a brand wasn't as much of a thing unless you were like Michael Jordan. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they both became brands because of each other. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to me how like, she was instantly like, whoa, now she's going to be married to Kanye West, who everyone took very seriously as an artist.
No, and this was after she had that like 13-month marriage to Chris Humphries, which everybody was like, what a joke. Like that was, people really looked down on her and thought that she was a joke because of it. They were not taking her seriously. She was sort of the butt of all things. I'm going to use that word.
Yeah.
She was a punchline for so long. So the fact that I think the reason why the relationship is over, I think this has been obviously like most marriages, divorce, it's over a course of time. It's not like one thing ever.
Yeah.
But I think that she's starting to develop and grow as somebody who truly cares about criminal justice reform. She's serious about taking the bar. Between the three of us, and I wouldn't say this publicly, but I guess it'll be on the show. I think that she has I'm just going to say a very strong friendship with Van Jones. I don't know. I don't think she's the kind of person to cheat. I don't think she's like that at all. But I think that Van Jones being in her life has really affected her identity, as opposed to Kanye, who was running around going, "I'm going to be president," and he's an unmedicated bipolar, unwilling to take medication. He tweeted that he was divorcing her. He tweeted against her and Meek Mill, who were trying to get trying to get somebody off of death row, whatever they were doing at the time, and then called her mother Chris Jong-un. So I think it was a combination of all those things that Kim was probably like, this is not the man. He's growing in a different direction than I am. And I think that they've really grown apart. She's not the punchline anymore. And I'm not the celebrity guy that you guys are anymore. And I'm certainly not the psychologist that you are, Cooper. Right. But I am the son and husband of therapists. So that makes me qualified for something. I would point this out too, that I don't know either of them personally. I've been in contact with both of them at various times for professional reasons, but I don't know them. But I think it's fair to say, as a sort of armchair psychologist from a distance, that there's a little bit of inherent narcissism in both camps. Oh, right? Yeah. Like you have to be to have that kind of lifestyle.
They're just the poster child of it.
And so my question then would be like, at some point, who's the star of the show? And it's very difficult to have two stars of the show.
Right.
And, there's always the Michael and the Scotty. There's always the Kirk and the Spock. There's always the number two on the teams that work. And there's no number two there.
Well, I think that's a very good point. I think those roles changed. I think when they first got together, she was number two, but now she's number one by far because he can keep walking around saying that he's a billionaire. But I know somebody that works for his record label, and their job is to manage his money. He is in debt. He's millions of dollars in debt, both to his record label and to his clothing lines, and he's lost a lot of money. So he's not the billionaire he says he is. So I think that now she's number one, and he's a low man on the totem pole.
Yeah, and I don't think that is easy for someone like him to deal with. And you've seen like the acting out, the way that he sort of like the rampage that he sort of went on that you talked about. It makes sense that at some point, when the dynamic flips like that, you have to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anyone would have guessed, at the beginning of this relationship that either one of them would have been long-term okay with that. And so, Kim Kardashian never wanted, it doesn't seem to me that her desire was to be Mrs. West. Mm. And I don't think that Kanye's desire was to be Mr. Kardashian. I think they thought, this is a good union. This works. Which is not to say they weren't in love with each other, but it's also like, I think it made sense at the time, to the point where everyone was like, oh, this is ridiculous. And I was very much on board with that, like saying, no, this makes total sense. And it makes sense to me now that it's over because it just has run its course.
I have a question for you, Peter Grossman.
Yeah,
I got a question for you. Okay. So I think Kim Kardashian is somebody that obviously her brand is important. Her image is important. I think her friendship with Beyonce and her association with Beyonce and Jay-Z was very important to her. And Kanye really screwed that up. I think to me, that was the linchpin. That was the beginning of the end. I think when he ended his relationship with Jay-Z, or not, I don't know. What do you think of that? Do you think that was so important to her that it kind of, because that's their society?
I mean, I don't think any one person that isn't, a family member is that important to her in terms of her career, in terms of her, what she climbing the ladder. But I mean, I think back to, her getting invited, like the Fashion Week stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all this. Kim Kardashian would not have been in that circle until Kanye, and now she was sort of at Met Ball, kind of like rubbing elbows with people that were elevated in that
right
area,
right.
So and I think that once Kanye, he was her ticket into that, but at the time he started sort of going like that feud with Jay-Z and that sort of split there, that was at a time where I don't know that she necessarily felt on solid ground in her standing to whatever extent that was important to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that was, I know from having worked at us back then that was like a huge problem, was that, don't mess this up for me kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. Do you think, okay. And do you think that his mental illness and his unwillingness to medicate or do anything about it or take it seriously, do you think she's concerned for her kids in terms of that?
This would be complete speculation on my part. I would hope that anyone would be concerned for their children, in a scenario like that. That treads on some sort of some interesting, sort of difficult ground. No one's been closer to him than her. She's known and been aware of his tendencies and his need for help. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's always sort of frustrated me about that relationship from afar. It's like he would go off on these tirades, running for president, all this sort of like, you obviously know about this more than me, but the sort of the high up slope, the manic episode.
Right.
And it just looked like he didn't have a support system. And I remember reading things.
He refused. They kept wanting to 5150 him. They kept trying to get him. Mm-hmm. He's unmedicated. They're aware that he's bipolar. They kept trying to help him and he kept refusing help. He's somebody that doesn't, after a while, look, if you're with somebody that's depressed, somebody who's an alcoholic, somebody, whatever your significant other's issue is, if they're unwilling to handle it or do something about it, that doesn't last long.
Of course. And I think that like, this is where, especially when you get on the subject of mental illness, and where the line gets drawn where nobody knows. And right. We knew, when I was working at us, we never published a thing that we didn't know was true. I think that was one of the things that kind of separated us from that version of Us Weekly, at least, from other tabloids. So, we would run with what we knew, but we didn't know everything.
Right.
And the idea of like, well, he's refused help, or, we just don't know what goes on in that innermost circle.
Well, they've told us that. No, they've come out and told us that. They've both talked about it pretty openly.
I know, but I have not. I've seen enough from both sides to know that what they tell us is what they tell us.
I see what you're saying. And so even an interview that he did with Charlemagne the God, where it seemed like he was being really honest and open and coming out, we don't know that if that's necessarily true or just what he felt like saying to Charlemagne that day.
It's more the second part than the first. I would guess, and again, this is speculation, but I would imagine it's what he believed in that moment at the time.
I see. Okay.
But that does not mean that is what it's like on the inside every day. And to have acts, when you're Kanye West and you want to give an interview, you can give an interview at any point in time. People will jump to be available to hear what you have to say in that moment.
Right.
And if he's with someone he trusts, he might open up even more. But again, like you say, you're talking about if he is an unmedicated, if he suffers from bipolar disorder and he's unmedicated, then there's no interview that he could give to any person that would be the truth.
Right.
That would be like that we could take and say, okay, that's the real him.
Anthony, get Kanye on the show. Get in touch with Kanye. See if he'll come do our show.
Well, Peter's got his number.
Why not?
Peter's got him on speed dial, so slip me the number.
Can I tell you my two? And can I give you my two quick encounters with Kanye West?
Yes, please.
So when I was working here, the first one was many, 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 many years ago. I was working for Rolling Stone, and we were doing a photo shoot. where we're supposed to do a photo shoot. And he showed up, and I remember so very well. It was the tour and the album with the little bear on the cover, the teddy bear on the cover. And he was about to go on tour, and he shows up at the shoot, and we're all sitting there. I'm like, whoa, it's Kanye West. It's pretty cool. And some moron that works for the record label comes out with the T-shirt for the tour.
College dropout,
and thinks like, this is the good time to show Kanye the T-shirt when he's about to go into a shoot. And he shows Kanye the T-shirt, and Kanye completely lost his mind because the teddy bear was the wrong shade of brown.
Oh, no.
And he could not let it go. And he just went off on this kid who obviously had nothing to do with the T-shirt. And I'm like, I'd never seen one of these before. I'm like, oh, this is like a real celebrity meltdown thing where they yell at people and stuff. I mean, there were no iPhones at the time. Like, it was so cool.
Right.
But then he was like, I'm taking a sick day.
No.
And he just walks out of the shoot. He's like, people take sick days, right? This is a sick day. I'm taking a sick day. And walked out. I was like, but, and that was it. I didn't get to talk about
no shoot at all. No photos.
No shoot. He took a sick day.
So what do? Do you have to go back to your manager then and say, I got nothing?
It was just one of those. Yeah. But it's one of those things where no one blames you. It's like you hear about this stuff in the industry, and it's like, oh, he did one of those things that people do, and it was like, could you handle this? There was no controlling the situation. Like, I should have kept the record label dude out of the room, I guess. Right. Lesson learned. Yeah. But I was literally in the record label offices. It wasn't even my space. Like, I had no choice. But it was fairly amazing. My second run-in was with the two of them. I have spoken to Kim and the family around like shoots and interviews and things that we would do with the magazine. But that's very professional, and here's, it's very just like logistical stuff. Right. The other time I was working for us, but I was I had taken a day off, and my wife and I flew to Los Angeles for a job interview for me. Okay. Someone was attempting to poach me away from Us Weekly. And nobody knew that I was going. I didn't want to tell anybody,
Was it the Weekly World News?
It was
that would have been cool. Then we'd really respect you.
It would have been awesome.
It would have been cool. It would have been a change. It was for a change in medium to out of print. And I'll leave it at that. But it was something that was worth flying to LA for the weekend for. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, I'm staying with friends. Nobody knows I'm here. It's good. I've got my, your work lie that everybody tells. Like, okay, I've got my work lie set. Mm-hmm. And so I go, have a great weekend. Interview goes great. Come back through the airport, and we're on the same flight as Kim and Kanye.
No.
And they're walking through. I'm walking right next to them, and the paparazzi, who are all like people who I know, are firing away, and I'm in the back. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in the back. I'm going to get found out because all of my coworkers are going to see the paparazzi pictures of them coming through the airport. And so there's a couple of frames. You don't ever see my face, but we're like, me and my wife covering our faces. And I remember showing up at Us Weekly on Monday and going on to like this storage space, this place where we keep all of our pictures, finding them and just deleting them. So, the ones with me in them. I'm like, okay, nobody saw these. I'm in the back, Kim and Kanye blowing up my spot. That's
hilarious. I love it.
That's as close as I got to them.
I love that, like, you got to work. People are like, oh, you got those Kim and Kanye Wait a minute, is that Peter Grossman back there?
Yeah. And it's listen, I've found my way into the background of a few of those at various moments where I was.
But you weren't cheating on your company at the time.
With the Weekly
I wasn't
World
cheating
News.
on my company at the time. No. Especially not for the Weekly World News. That would have been. They wouldn't have appreciated that.
Well, Peter Grossman, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about Kim and Kanye. I love that you have a unique perspective on it, and I like that you were there at the beginning, and here you are at the end, and we'll have you on again when Kim gets married for the fourth time.
I look forward to that. I think we all do.